All right, so like Shauna said, we're going to talk about building permits, but also business licensing today, because both of those are a really important part of planning for a business or a new location. And we're going to talk about how they might impact your business while you're getting it started. So today, it'll be Sylvia O'Rourke, our parking and licensing agent. She's right here. And myself, Laura Elliott. I'm one of the building officials here at the city. And we're going to start by talking about business licenses. Then we'll split it up. So we'll do some business license questions. Please, as Shauna said, put your questions in the chat. We'll get to those when we're done the business license portion. And then we'll move on to building permits. Do some common questions and answers, and then we'll take your building permit questions separately at the end. So I'm going to hand it off to Sylvia now to get started with business licenses.
All right, hello everybody. So the first thing that you need to do when you're planning a business is to know where to start. It's important to do your homework before you apply for your business license. You can ask general questions at first, if you don't have a specific location in mind, but once you start the process, you have to have an address to get complete information. So the first place to start is with the planning department. You want to make sure that your business and location meets all the zoning requirements for the city of Cornwall. So do you need a building permit before you can get your business license? You probably do. Once the zoning is approved, you must speak to the building department to find out if any permits are required. Even though you're not planning any renovations, there might be a need for a building permit that you don't know about. For example, if your business is to be located in a home, or if you want to open a restaurant and the space that you want was last used as an office, or if the type of sign that you want, depending on the type of sign, it might need a permit. So Laura will be talking more about the building side of this, but you do have to visit zoning and the building department before you even think about applying for your business license. There are many types of business licenses. You can see some of them on the screen. They're not all listed there, but it's to give you an idea. So not every type of business requires a municipal business license. These are some examples. If you're selling food, for instance, or providing a personal service like cutting hair, manicures, tattoos, or if you're selling gasoline or repairing vehicles, those are types of businesses that would require a license. So if you're not sure, you can certainly contact the bylaw department. You can also look it up online under the city website at www.cornwall.ca under the title Do Business, and you'll see all the business licenses that we have in the municipalities there, and there's information you could find. So if you have any questions about business licenses, you can call the line 613-930-2787, extension 2225, or you can send us an email at businesslicense@cornwall.ca. So how do you apply for a business license? Well, there are several ways. You can apply in person by coming to the Civic Complex on the second floor. You can find the initial application that you see on the screen here on our website. And there is an information sheet located there as well for each type of business that tells you what information you need to provide, whether there's documentation you have to provide, or what the fee is, what inspections you'll need. It's all listed there. There will also be an opportunity later to apply through a portal system. We are working on completing our portal project, which will give us the ability to apply online, and that will be launched soon. So stay tuned for that. And once your submittal has been received in its entirety, you'll be responsible to schedule the inspections for your type of business. The ones that are required will be listed on the information sheet under initial business license application. For instance, you may not need an electrical inspection if you're not a stationary food premise or a special event in the park. You might not need a health inspection if you are opening a pawn shop or a recycling facility. So this information sheet will be specific to the type of business that you want. So when can you open your business? Once you have applied, passed all your inspections, then you will receive your business license. This business license should be posted on a wall inside the business in a visible place, and it must be renewed every year. The main message is that doing your homework before you apply for your business license will avoid surprises, which could be both time-consuming and costly. So I'll leave you with that. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to do that now.
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. That was great. I'll just put hands up maybe for anybody that's on the call today. If you're planning to apply for a business license in the near future, or if you've just applied for a business license, either pop it in the chat or just put your hand up, that little icon. We have a question that's come in, Sylvie. So do we have to apply for a license after we sign a lease and before we renovate?
You should do all your homework before you sign the lease to make sure that you will be able to get a business license. And you have to apply for your permit, also your building permit to do your renovations before your license. Your part of your business license inspections will include building and plumbing and that kind of thing. So usually the inspections for the building permit and the business license are done at the same time. I don't know.
And I'll add to that too a little bit, is that from our center perspective, before you sign a lease, you should always do your homework. So you don't necessarily have to apply for your permit before you sign the lease, but you should at least contact the building department or the business license and kind of go through the steps to see what you need. So there's no surprises before you sign, you know what you're getting into. So we have another question. So what if my business is a residential rental?
Can you clarify that?
Maybe if whoever asked that question, can you put a little bit more context in that to that, please? And we'll get back to that one. We have my business type isn't listed in the table on the website. Does that mean I don't need a license?
It's quite possible that you don't need a license, but you should contact the bylaw department to make sure.
Okay, and we have one more, and then we will go to our building part of the presentation. So if your business is located in Long Sault, but you may open or purchase a house or commercial property in Cornwall to have a shop, not to customers, do we need to apply for a business license?
So the business license goes with the address of the business. So if the business is in Cornwall and it's something that we license, then yes, you would need a business license.
So Kim, just so each municipality or each township does things a little bit different. So if you open a business in the city, you do require a license. If you're located in South Stormont, they don't require business licenses at this time. So that's where it's a little bit different. So if you are planning to open a commercial property, I definitely suggest that you check out or give a call to Sylvie or email and just to clarify things. Oh, okay, just we're going back to that question about the residential rental. If they want it to be a landlord and rent out apartments, do they require, I guess do you need like a license to rent apartments?
No, not at this time. We don't, that's not part of our business licensing.
Okay. Thanks, Sylvia, that was great. I'll pass the reins off to you, Laura.
All right, thanks, Shauna. So that was really focused on business licensing up until now, and business licensing, I just want to clarify, is municipally regulated, but building permits are provincially regulated. So the information that we have from here on out should be applicable to all municipalities across the province, maybe with some exceptions and variations, but not typically. So I'll start just by giving our website. There's lots of great information on our website that I have up here. You can find out some examples of what you need for building permits on our website. You can find out or get a copy of all the forms that you may need. You can get a link to our email address and to our phone numbers. And just as Sylvie was saying, we have an online portal system coming in that will cover building permits as well. So shortly, it's not running yet, but very shortly, you should be able to apply for a permit fully online. You can do it already through email. So you can do that or ask any questions with the email address that I have up, permits@cornwall.ca. So if you think of something after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us or give us a call at extension 2355 and we can help you out. Right, so we'll dive right in and start by talking about when we need a building permit. I have some legal speak up. It's the Building Code Act's wording for when we need a building permit or a change of use permit. And both of these come up very regularly when people are starting a business. So the first one is the one that everyone knows. And that's that if you're doing any kind of construction on a property, you're going to need a building permit. So if you plan to move some interior walls around, you're going to need a building permit. If you plan on putting some new plumbing in your building, you're going to need a building permit. If you're going to change the type of HVAC system or dramatically change any part of your building, you'll need it. We don't require permits for decorations, for painting, for changing, just changing out a rooftop unit if that's the only part, or for other very standard maintenance tasks. But if you're ever in doubt, please reach out and ask us and we'll let you know. The other common one that comes up with new businesses is a change of use. So even if there's no construction proposed, sometimes you need to get a change of use permit, which is regulated under the Building Code Act, if you're trying to change the use of your building. And we're going to get into that in a slide or two. So we'll get into it right away. So a change of use permit relates to a group, the groupings of the way that we use buildings under the building code. So generally you can have buildings that are used for occupancy purposes, for care purposes, for mercantile purposes, office purposes, residential, and industrial. And all of your buildings are going to, all of your uses are going to fall under one of those. They all have different requirements in terms of what the buildings need. For example, an occupancy building is like a restaurant, and it is meant for lots of people to gather in, the public, and they're not overly familiar with the space and they have to get out quickly. But there isn't a lot of stuff in that type of building. Whereas a mercantile building has lots of stuff in it, things people are selling. They're often flammable. So the requirements are different. And when you go from one of those groups to another, you have to get this change of use permit to make sure that the building is really set up for what you're changing that use for. So common things that we see here in Cornwall is offices changed to stores or vice versa. Maybe you want to use an old storage building as a store or an office or a restaurant. You'd have to get a change of use permit for that. So it's really helpful when you're looking to start your business in a space to look for a space that's very similar in use to what you're planning to do. So if it's already a restaurant, there's a really good chance that you're going to be able to use it as a restaurant. If it's already a store, you're probably not going to run into a lot of issues to continue using it as a store. So when you recognize that you need a building permit, you're going to do construction or you're going to change the use, you need to apply for the building permit. So this is really helpful to do in advance because it can take some time to get a permit. One of the most important things that you have to do is decide what you really want to do with that space before you even start. If your plans are changing along the way after you get your design done and get your permit, then you're going to run into expensive and time-consuming, really just delays. Everything can be solved, but you'll run into delays, and that's usually what we want to avoid. So have a firm idea of what you want to do with your space. Find a qualified designer and have your plans produced. Depending on the size of the building, you might be able to hire someone who has what's called a BCIN number, a building code identification number, which means that they've taken exams and are licensed through the province to be able to work as a designer. Or maybe if your building's quite large or if you're a restaurant, you might need architects and engineers involved. So be prepared to get a designer with qualifications that really understands the building code. The next thing that you'll want to do is prepare your application. And your application will include the standard forms that are on our website. There's a 2-page application form, what we call a Schedule 1, which gives designer information. A Schedule 3, which is about consent, and it's about the deposit that you'll give. And then you're going to sometimes, depending on the situation, have to provide other information like a commitment to general review. Sometimes you'll need engineering forms. We can give you all that information if you come to our desk or if you ask us and you have a good idea of the project that you want to do. It really varies project by project. So the next thing that you'll do once you've gathered all these documents and had all your plans produced is you'll submit that application to the building department, and then you'll pay your fees at the time of application. One thing that commonly comes up at the business licensing stage is sign permits. So I encourage everyone to think in advance about their sign permits. Everyone who puts a sign up, whether it's a freestanding sign or it's a fascia sign on their building or a sign on their roof, you all need a sign permit. You can get away without a sign permit if you are just putting a window film, for example, on your building, or if you're putting a new slider into an existing sign. So sometimes the sign's existing, you're just refacing it with your building's information. You don't need a permit for that. But if you're going to be attaching anything to the building or sticking anything in the ground, you do need to apply. And sign permits are subject to the same kind of designer qualifications that a building permit is. In fact, they all fall under building permits. And they'll also be subject to the Cornwall sign bylaw regulations. So that information's on our website as well. We have our sign bylaw available there. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So once you've made your application, you have to sometimes wait a little bit while we're doing the review before you can get the building permit. Shouldn't take long if your application is really complete. For example, if you've submitted a complete application that gives us all the information that we need and it meets the building code, then we should be able to process your application within 15 to 20 business days. It also has to go through zoning review, engineering review, and other applicable law. And those are areas that can often hold things up. So if you're really close to the highway, for example, or if you're working out of a heritage building, these things will really often take extra time on the review. So make sure you're aware of those before. And when you first visited the zoning counter and the building counter, you may be able to identify some of those potential challenges early on and plan for them when you're trying to determine a timeline. So once your permit is issued, you'll get a lovely 5x8 sheet of paper with the chief building official's signature on it, and you can tape that up in the window of your building and you can start work. During that time, you'll have to call for the inspections that are listed on your building and permit once those stages are ready to inspect. And we'll come in, we'll do our inspections, we'll chat about the next stages with you, and you can go ahead with your construction. Once you have an occupancy inspection, then that means that you should be good to move ahead with your business license if necessary, or move ahead and open your business. You don't have to wait for the final inspection to open, just occupancy. So at this point, I'd like to thank everybody, and please let us know if you have any questions. We'll open it up again.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, that's lots of great information. Whenever you're purchasing a business for anyone, there's always a whole lot going on. So it's very good advice to be able to kind of sort everything out right from the beginning. So find out what you need to know right from the get-go, and then it makes things a lot smoother as the process goes on. We do have a few questions. Just make this a bit bigger here. Okay. For a temporary lawn sign, it's saying here you don't need a permit. I guess asking, do you need a permit for a temporary lawn sign?
No, that's correct. Not for a temporary lawn sign. Those little guys that you stick in, no. But if you're putting in, the 4x4 posts in the concrete and it's a bigger sign, that's when you'd need one.
Do you need a building permit for the construction of freestanding walls within an existing building?
Yes, you would. I know a lot that's a common misconception, but it really does affect things. It can affect your sprinkler system if you have one. In every building, it'll affect travel distance. That's the distance that people have to run or walk to get out of the building. And so we do require permits for those.
So just so I understand too, Laura, just to make it clear, like the requirements for a residential is very different than the requirements for a commercial property, correct?
Yes, I wouldn't say the process is very different, but the needs for designers are definitely different. In your own house, you can do a lot of the design work yourself, whereas you have to hire a designer in a business. But also just the requirements for different buildings they vary building type to building type.
Are you allowed to have indoor inventory during the construction process?
Indoor inventory. Not typically. It really depends. If you're doing, for example, a small renovation on, I don't know, we'll use a washroom, for example, and you want to do that renovation just because you want to. you can run your business while you're doing that. I think we've all seen the mall, for example, right now is doing renovations on their food court and they're still operational. So there are ways for things to work, but if you need a change of use permit, for example, you should not open the business or use that new occupancy type until your permit has been issued and final.
So this one I'm not familiar with at all. So can you speak to record of site condition requirements? And does the city require them in situations additional to the provincially mandated change of more sensitive land use?
I'm not as familiar with them as the planning department is. I know they're the ones who regularly work with them, and that falls under their area of expertise. So I really can't speak to them. I'm sorry.
So Jordan, to get the answer to your question, we can follow up by an email, or you can give a call to the planning department and get some more specific information. Either way, but we'll follow up with the contact information for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have one more question here. Oops. The timelines, what are to be expected? And yeah, for like, is there a certain timeline that the city always uses, or does it really depend on project? Can you explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. So the building code does lay out timelines. Residential houses, for example, from the time of a complete application to the time of a response, either issuing the permit or giving reasons for which to refuse the permit, would be within 10 business days. If it's a small building, you're looking at 15, and most large buildings are within 20 days. There are exceptions that would require longer times. So those are fairly typical. So most businesses fall into the 15 to 20 business days. However, if the application isn't complete, then the permit can't be processed in time. For example, if it's still going through planning review, or it's still going through other meeting other requirements of applicable law, then we wouldn't be able to meet those timelines.
That's a good answer. Yeah, it really depends, eh? Like it depends on everybody's situation. So, but it's always good to ask the question. And we have another question here. This is a good one. So who registers for the permit? The trade, or the builder, or the developer, or the owner?
That's a great question. So on our application form, we have a spot for an applicant, we have a spot for the owner, and we have an optional spot for the builder. The owner of the property has to be on it, and the owner of the property has to consent to having their property altered in some way. I think that makes perfect sense. But the applicant can be anyone. The applicant can be the person who wants to open the business. It can be the building owner, it can be the builder, it can be the architect. We see all those people as the applicant. But what they have to keep in mind is that they are that person who is going to be our touch point for the whole process of the permit. So if you're the business owner, you might want to be the person applying for that permit.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, I'll just put this out there again for a question for everyone. Is there anybody in the process of starting some renovations or thinking about doing some renovations in your business? Potentially looking at a commercial space that you're thinking of leasing? You just put your hand up in the little icons there at the bottom of your screen. Got another question here. So a property owner has posted their building permit in the third floor window where it can't be seen. What is the requirements for posting or disclosing the details of permits?
It should be posted in an obviously visible location. If you're posting it where it's really hard to see, then we could ask you to post it in a more visible location, but we don't usually make it a huge fuss. I haven't run into any situations before where it's been an issue to move it.
Is the landlord required to obtain any additional permits after renting their facilities to a tenant? Or does the sole responsibility for securing necessary permits fall on the tenant?
No, that would be between an agreement between you and your landlord. If construction or change of use happens without a permit, then the legally it would fall back on both the building owner and anybody who's involved in it.
Okay, so this is a question. So if there's say if there's a slowdown in the process, or if the client doesn't agree maybe with what the comments are on anything, is there a process through the city where things can be resolved?
Absolutely. So usually the first step is to talk to your designer and to talk to the city. And maybe there's a simple way around or simple different thing that can be done that falls within the building code. The building code, as a piece of provincial legislation, there's no way for municipalities to circumvent it or go against the building code. It's not like a minor variance where changes can be made with our zoning bylaws, for example. So there are opportunities for alternative solutions in some cases where the building code is met through a different way. And that can work really well for some people, depending on the situation, but the solution would still have to meet the intents and objectives of the building code. Ultimately, when there's a dispute, it can always be taken to the Building Code Commission if that dispute is technical in nature, and that's a provincial body that offers that service.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions? I didn't see any hands go up for, I might be able to see everybody though, so nobody. Oh, no, so nobody's building or looking to do any renovations in the near future. Okay. Well, oops, I lost. If there aren't any other questions, what I will do is we'll wrap up for today. We are recording this presentation, so if you'd like to rewatch it, then please send us an email and we will be able to share the link with you. And you can reach us at entrepreneurship@cornwall.ca. I'd also like to recommend any of our other webinars for any business owners who are currently present today. We have a series of webinars that happen most Thursdays at noon hour. Our next one is actually going to be on community improvement plans. So that's where we talk about the Heart of the City program specifically for the city. We're also going to be talking about the regional incentive program for the counties. So if you're interested in any additional funding or potential for funding, then please tune into that one next week. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Shauna.
Thank you.